Yes, people, before we get into the interview today, the next 20 interviews will be paying tribute to both Diogo and Andre, who sadly lost their lives due to a tire blowout on the 3rd of July. They are honestly both great footballers, even better men, and tragically taken from us too soon. And they'll always forever be our lads from Portugal, and Diogo Jota, you will always be our number 20. Enjoy the interview now. People, welcome back to Vinny's Voice. I'm fortunate and honored to be joined by Chris today. Chris, how are you this morning?
I'm great, man. Feeling good, feeling alive. We're over here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I just recently moved over here in May. Living life, loving life, and just continuing to train hard, man. Getting ready, hopefully, for some big announcements soon in the fight world, but just continuing to, do my thing and, like I said, just live life, train hard, and have fun.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Before we talk about your actual fights, I want to actually talk about how you first actually got into this sort of whole influencer crossover boxing space.
Yeah, man. So I actually started boxing. I went to the University of Alabama. And if you know anything about Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that's where the former heavyweight champion of the world, Deontay Wilder, is from, trains out of. And I went to go see him fight in 2016. And I was hooked. I wasn't into boxing before. I'd played sports growing up. I was a football player, basketball player. I just kind of got hooked. I went into his gym, started training with my boys a little bit just for fun. I wasn't competing at that time. 3 years later in 2019, I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and decided to kind of take the leap into the amateur scene, the USA boxing amateur scene. So I had a few fights there. I trained for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I only had 4 fights, but, was training with some Golden Glove winners in my gym. I just loved it, man. It was a new lease on life. It was the whole grind, training once or twice a day, the weight loss, just the way I felt in a boxing gym was unlike any other feeling I've ever had. So I fell in love with the sport. Then I took some time off, just, life, work, all that stuff. And I actually was in Indonesia for 1.5 years. So I was living there and I started training. They have a good fight scene there, mostly MMA, but, I started getting into the boxing gym. And then when I moved back, I was like, okay, maybe I want to start competing again. Like I just had that hunger that, obviously boxing had taken a big step. When I started my amateur career in 2019, this influencer scene was just kind of starting, it wasn't even a thing then. And then, being in Bali, being around a lot of influencers, being more involved in watching boxing and watching the influencer scene, I was like, okay, let me try to get on it. Well, I was also on a reality TV show, actually an Australian, New Zealand reality TV show.
I read about that. I'll research it. Yeah. I'm going to ask you about that. But
called Heartbreak Island. Yeah. I don't like to talk about it too much. It was definitely something else, but it was a fun experience. I got to spend 5 weeks in Fiji on that. And when I moved back, I moved to Chicago, and I actually lived in Nashville after college in 2018. So my boy, Matt Young, shout out Matt, he runs a lot of the Misfits USA shows. He's helping, run Aiden Ross's Brand Risk promotion. I actually did an internship with him for his promotional boxing company called TriStar. So that was 2018, 2023, I'm posting training videos on my Instagram, I didn't have any kind of fights coming up, but he had reached out to me and said, hey, we got this thing I'm working with Anthony Taylor called Creator Fight League. Obviously I didn't have a huge following, but, I was on reality TV. I had done a documentary. So I kind of fit that non-traditional, boxing lifestyle, even though I had competed in the amateurs previous. And I took a fight on 19 days notice.
Oh, wow.
I lied to him. I had just come off an injury. He wanted me to fight at 185. I was about 210 pounds, 19 days out, but I told him I was about 195. Cut all that weight, took a fight on 19 days notice, hadn't competed, didn't spar once. I mean, I hadn't sparred since like 2019. I'd been training a little bit, but, and then I, went down to Nashville, got the win on the first Creator Fight League card, and just had that feeling, man, like, that competitive nature came out. I just loved the walkout, the crowd, getting my hand raised after. And I was like, all right, man, let's do this thing, let's see where we can go. So yeah, that's kind of how I got back into the boxing scene. I've had 3 fights in the last year, all on Creator Fight League. I'm 2-1 on Creator Fight League, lost a decision fight to a guy named Bad Anthony. Was going through some stuff through that camp, and came back on my last fight, a lot better. I actually, kind of took it serious like a professional boxer would. I had about a 2-month camp, really got myself in shape, got my weight down, and here I am. I've done, a decent job, showing and proving my worth on the CFL scene. I've been talking to a lot of different promotions, and now I'm kind of sitting in a position where I train every day, if not 2 times a day, staying in shape, and just waiting on a good opportunity. So hopefully something this fall. But yeah, man.
Yeah, for sure. Your resume is very, very impressive. And you talked about different promotions. You talked to different promotions. What sort of promotions are we saying? Like potentially even like maybe even like pro sort of boxing, or maybe other like influencer promotions such as Brand Risk?
Yeah. So, I actually help on the sponsorship side for USA Saiyan. Right. He's obviously on Brand Risk. I was down in Miami at his first Brand Risk event. I did a lot of networking down there. So my name has been, swirling around kind of the Brand Risk. Obviously I'm not a streamer. So, that's obviously a big streaming community. And I have gotten reached out by a couple traditional professional boxing promotions. If I could have made my pro debut already, but that's not necessarily the route I want to take. I don't need boxing. Boxing is something that I love and I enjoy. A lot of and I've been around a lot of traditional boxers, man. There's boxers that literally do this thing for a living. They have to fight to put food on the table. They have to, really put everything into the boxing. And for me, this is just a side quest. It's fun. Obviously training's a big part of my life, but I just love competing. So, I think I did a good job of proving my worth in the last 3 CFL cards. I have fun with it. My walkouts are fun. I've had my guy walk out with me the last 2 times with his electric violin. I just, you see a lot of people in this scene, they're all like tensed up and, like I'm ready to die for this, like, big macho. And for me, like I'm dancing in the back, I'm smiling, like this is fun for me. So with that being said, like, I want big opportunities on big platforms. Granted, I understand also that I don't have the biggest following in the scene. I get that. So it's hard for me to leverage myself in a way where like, I can like sit around and wait on a Misfits or a Brand Risk. But, Mams Taylor has been to my fights. I've had a lot of discussions with Anthony Taylor about prospective fights, upcoming big fights. And so for me, it's just, I'm always ready to go. I'm at the point where you give me 4 weeks, I'm good. So I'm just, I love doing this. It's fun. And yes, I want to get back in the ring because the last time I fought was end of January. I want to get back in the ring soon, but it's not something that, I'm going to just take any sort of fight. I've done that my last 3 fights. I've taken the, just being there, the fights, whoever, I don't care. But now I'm kind of looking for something that's going to get me going, so hopefully soon.
Exactly. So I actually really agree with you on the point of like what influencer boxing is. Like, in my opinion, we see a lot of influencer boxers really go headfirst into the boxing and sort of act like pro boxers. But at the end of the day, you guys are influencers. You guys are here to have fun. You guys are here to entertain a crowd. And at the end of the day, it's just, even though it is sort of life and death, because boxing is a very serious sport.
Yep.
You guys are sort of different from the pro boxers. It's good to have the separation from influencer boxing and pro boxing, but that's what makes influencer boxing. And I think, I watched your fights. I watched how you, like, your walkouts with the violin. Like, I love that. I think it's your most recent fight that you won. That walkout was, honestly, I really loved it. But I was like, everyone is like, you see everyone walking out like many men, and then like you're walking out to like a really cool sort of walkout. And I think, if I'm being honest, I've interviewed a lot of people in the small creator scene at this moment. I'll say you are sort of epitomize what influencer boxing is, and I mean that genuinely, like, because at the end of the day, it's about putting on a show and making a crowd entertained, and not, trying to be Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And the thing is too is, I still train like a dog. Like,
exactly. I mean, you're a very good fighter, 100%.
Yeah, I train like, I'm a pro boxer, but at the end of the day, I don't take myself too seriously. Like, I'm going to go out there and entertain, and, the stuff that I've been able to do so far, that's just a slither of, what's to come, especially if I get on a big platform. Like, you put me on a Misfits, you put me on a Brand Risk, like that kind of walkout, it'll be 10x. I already have plans and ideas of what I want to do in the future, and I want to entertain. I want to have fun, and at the end of the day, I'm still going to train harder than most of these guys. That's just my personality. Even when I don't have fights, I mean, I'm training 2 times a day minimum every day. I take care of myself. I eat healthy. I stay in shape. I just love to do that anyways. But I also, like you said, there's a lot of boring fighters out there, man, that, and what I've noticed too is even the guys who love to talk on X and, have this big macho personality on social media. I tell people this all the time. When you go into the arena on fight night, you're seeing everybody before, you're doing your physicals, whatever. Like, everybody's tense. They're like nervous, they're not. For me, like, I love that because my personality is like, I'm smiling, I'm having fun, I'm in the back hitting pads, I'm dancing. Like, I want to have fun with it. Life's too short not to have fun. Yes, it's a serious sport. You can get seriously hurt, but that's why I train so hard. Yeah, I know I'm training harder than most of these guys. I'm training traditionally, but I am not going to be that guy that's like, this is life or death. I'm going to really hurt you. Like, this is what, I'm just that macho, like, I want to bring a different vibe to the sport. I want to bring a little sexiness to it. I want to dance in the ring. I want to mix my boxing with my aggression and have fun with it. So, and again, it's, I don't have the biggest following. So, for me right now, I think, I have a lot of plans for content moving forward. I need to get my name out there more and show that personality more. I think that's the harder part for me. The boxing comes easy. The confidence comes easy. So it's really just about putting myself out there more. And really, for me, one big opportunity could change the whole landscape of my boxing career. So,
yeah, for sure, mate. So obviously, you did mention you took a loss, I think, in your second CFL fight, and yes, you did have some external sort of factors and circumstances. But when you unfortunately did lose. After, let's say, looking back at the fight, what was like one of that big takeaway that you took from that loss, and in order to, per se, improve or instill in your future fight camps?
Yeah, I think I had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of injuries. I wasn't able to spar as much as I would have liked to for that. It was an opponent change 2 weeks before. I also learned that I need a proper warm up before my fight. My first CFL fight, I literally stretched out. I didn't hit pads at all. I think I just won that off size and aggression and adrenaline. This fight, there was a mix up. I thought I was going to be later in the card. They put me earlier. I think I hit pads for a minute, didn't really get a sweat going. So mentally I learned a lot. I think that the preparation changed a lot from that fight to the next fight. It was also elevating the people I was around. For my last fight, I went down and trained with USA Saiyan. And just being around a group of guys kind of in that influencer scene, and just all we were doing was boxing training, I think that helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that I expected to win that fight. And so as I still trained hard for that fight, I didn't spar as much as I would have liked. I think that's a big difference that led up to my next fight. But I think the confidence got to me a little bit more. And then I think that fight really opened me up to being okay with losing. I mean, I went back to the locker room and I just got on the knee. I think I punched a wall a couple of times, and then I legit had tears in my eyes because I'm like, oh shit, I didn't think that this was going to happen. That was my first loss, amateur or semi-pro with Creator Fight League, that I had lost.
Yeah.
I've never been hurt in sparring. I've never been, down. I've never felt that in a fight. And so I think once I kind of gathered myself and realized that, losing is a possibility, I think that just kind of gave me a different level of hunger, So yeah, I learned a lot. I think just preparation. Sorry, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, I think just preparation changed. I think just knowing that going in there, there's a possibility of losing, and just being a little bit more free. And I just needed to throw more in that. I was lost in that fight. I don't know what happened. And people who watch, even though the level of competition against Bad Anthony was better than my last opponent, which again, that was another last minute change of an opponent, nothing to do with me. I just showed up. But you could just see the different level I was at in my last fight than that fight. My movement, my speed, I was in a lot better shape. So I learned a lot, and just staying on top of it. In boxing, you can't take time off. After a fight, you got to stay in the gym. Because you'll lose that momentum really quick. So and it taught me that I never want to lose again. So I got to keep training harder. But it's okay. Credit to Bad Anthony. He's a good guy. He's a good fighter. Maybe one day we'll run it back. I mean, I know he's a little bit older now, so that doesn't really interest me as much. But man, you win some, you lose some. Yeah,
bro. It's all part of the game at the end of the day. So talk about your future fights. I believe you, not rumor, but I saw a Twitter post about you and Anthony the Protector. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what do you make of that fight? Because obviously I believe you're very, you're very happy, you're dancing and all that. And then Anthony, I would say, portrays himself to be very macho, very macho, that fighter. So both in and outside the ring, what do you think about that potential matchup with him?
I love that matchup, man. I mean, Anthony's a good fighter. From what I've seen, he's a decent fighter. I mean, he's no bum for sure, but dude has an obsession with me. I don't know what it is. I think after my last fight, he was making memes of me. He was calling me out on X, and I'm like, dude, like, relax. You know, he's this guy who's like, I gotta die for this, I'm willing to die. You know, again, like I was saying, that macho mentality, like, cool, man, you know, like, do you. But he just has this obsession with fighting me, and I told him I'll fight him. You know, I want to fight him on a big platform, though. You know, I think that fight would be great on a Misfits prelim. I think that fight would be great on Brand Risk. You know, I love Creator Fight League and what they've been able to do for me, and the platform they've given me, you know, so far. But, you know, I'm looking to take a fight that gets me going, and he doesn't get me going on CFL, honestly. Like, if you give me a Brand Risk or Misfits fight, I'll take that fight 2-3 weeks notice. I don't care. I'm not afraid of him. That macho man, like, he can act all tough, but, you know, in my personal opinion, he's slow. Plus he won't come down to 175, doubtfully. I'll meet him at like 185, 190. I don't really care. I mean, I walk around at like 190 right now, 189, 188. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about him. You know, he's good for him. I think he's a decent fighter. I just, I think he gets a little too macho on X, and his little manager that, you know, rolls around and tries to stir up. Yeah, he tries to stir up stuff, and he's this little, you know, they're posting clips on X that I see that are like sped up, and, you know, they're trying to act all tough. It's like, we don't have to act all tough. If it makes sense, it makes sense. I'll fight anybody. Like, I'm not scared of him. You know, I don't have to do this. I don't have to box. I do this for fun, and I'll box him if it makes sense. So, but, you know, more credit to him. Good luck with whatever he does. I don't really think too much about him. So, yeah, maybe that fight's in my future. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I believe you are Misfits caliber, so I do want to actually talk about Misfits boxing. So you say you're 175-pound division. Let's just say you're looking at the Misfits roster at the moment. Who, let's say maybe in the future, potentially even a year from now, would you actually like to fight from that 175-pound roster on Misfits?
To be honest, who's even into 175? Like, you know, for me personally, again, I walk around at about high 180s, like 190, right? So 175 is easy for me, but I'll also fight at 200, you know, if it makes sense, right? Yeah. Like, I probably feel the best at 175. You know, I'm 6'2". I feel strong. I feel fast at that weight. So I think that, you know, in bigger fights, 175 would be good. But again, like, if I would get an opportunity to fight an Aaron the Plumber, an HS, a Wade, like, I would fight at 200. I would fight Chase Demore at, you know, I would go up to like 210, fight him, you know, but I'm also not naive. I know that these fights are something that I would have to seriously build to, just with my following and everything else. But I just know that, you know, if I get an opportunity against anybody on a Misfits prelim and just am able to show my personality. I mean, if you go back on my fights, Ben Davis, you know, he talks about previously, like, this guy has it all. You know, he's got the persona, he's got the boxing ability. You know, yes, I don't have a big following. Yes, I need to get my name out there more. Yes, I need to promote a little bit more. I understand that. So I can't leverage myself. I'm not an idiot. Like, some of these guys are idiots. They think that they can just, you know, pop up to the top, fight whoever they're calling everybody out. I'm not somebody who's going to call people out. You know, I'm trying to get the opportunity, and hopefully, you know, if I do get that opportunity, people will see, you know, I'm the real deal. Like, I can box, I can have fun. I can be a crowd favorite, you know? So, I'm not looking at anybody specifically. I just, again, like, I'd fight anybody, really, you know, if it's on the right platform, if it makes sense, I'm willing to get in the ring with anybody. That's one thing. I'm never afraid to fight anybody. So, hopefully that time comes soon.
Yeah, for sure. I hope so too, mate. So if you didn't hear the recent news, I mean, wouldn't say recent, about a month ago, Misfits or Mams Taylor announced that they're reducing from 8 events to 6 events per year. And I asked you this question because you, as you said, you are a smaller creator. But seeing that, does that sort of, let's say, I wouldn't say worry. I wouldn't say worry is the best word, but I want to say worry you because there's obviously limited slots on these fight cards, and I'll tell you my opinion about this. Like, you look at someone like Fox the G, like before Misfit, now he's a
My
huge
guy.
star. Yeah,
Love Fox the G, my guy.
he was Mavs invested in him in Misfits 01. Like, he was the ring announcer, and I'd say Misfits invested in him as well as other fighters. So do you think limiting these events and only potentially putting on big fights is sort of, let's say, hindering smaller creators to be invested in order to propel to stardom, such as yourself? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Like Mams, who I've met a couple of times, you know, he's a businessman at the end of the day. It has to make sense, right?
Yeah.
You know, their DAZN deal has been going on for a couple of years. Obviously, nobody is really nobody really understands how that's working in the background on the business end. And, you know, we'll see what happens. Like I said before, you know, I'm willing to fight on any of his shows. I think it would be an absolute honor, but I understand that it makes sense business wise to kind of cut it down a little bit and make bigger fights. Now, does that still say there's not an opportunity for him to invest in somebody like myself? No, because I think you could build the right people, right? You know,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Even some of these guys with huge followings, they don't have that personality, that charisma, right? So it's kind of hard to teach that. And it's hard to teach, you know, going in there and having good fights, you know, putting on actual good fights. So, you know, again, hopefully there's an opportunity. You know, I've tried to put on the best shows I can in front of Mams. Yeah. But again, you know, business, it has to make sense. But the one thing about boxing is boxing's hot right now. So whether it is Misfits, you see how big Brand Risk is come along so far. There's going to be, you know, there's Creator Fight League does a good job in the small creator. I've been seeing DKM Plush over in the UK. You know, I've been talking to them a little bit. You know, there's these promotions that are coming up, and you don't know if any of them could turn into the next Misfits or the next Brand Risk. You know, obviously you have to have a lot of money behind it. You have to have a lot of big names, but I don't think that there's going to be a decline of opportunities out there. Now, obviously people want to fight on Brand Risk and Misfits because those are the big dogs right now, but everything changes. You know, this game changes really quickly. You've seen what, you know, has been happening in the professional ranks since 2020. You know, Turki Al-Sheikh, you know, coming in, buying the ring, all the mix-ups in the professional scene. So it is a little sad again, because it just, you know, the percentage drops of chances to get on. But, you know, I'm hopeful that, you know, I'll get an opportunity. And again, you know, I'm the kind of guy in the position I am that you could build, right? You know, start from the bottom, build up, because I feel like I have it all. I feel like I have the skill. I feel like I have the charisma. I have the ideas of how to sell a fight and how to make it more entertaining for the fans. And I actually, you know, work hard at this thing. So, you know, it only takes one opportunity. So, you know, I just look at the positives, man. I don't, you know, good luck to Misfits, good luck to Mams on what they do. And I'm excited to see how everything turns out.
Yeah, for sure. I want to touch on a point that you did mention previously. You talked about, obviously, a potential fight opponent of yours, Anthony, and his manager Josh posting on like X and trying to like you could rile you up and act tough. In general, I like to just ask you, what do you make of those like people? I wouldn't say not people like that, but like people who try to quote unquote act, tougher online, but like potentially like in person, they sort of, how can I say, don't act like how they're perceived online. I would just say it like that. What do you make of that? Just in general.
I think in boxing general, I see it all the time. People will talk tough online, and then when you see them, they act scared, they're nervous. It's like, for me, man, people meet me and they're very surprised when I tell them that I box, right? Because I'm just a nice guy in general. I carry myself in a compassionate way. I really care for others. This boxing thing is a way for me to compete. Yes, there is shit talking. Yes, there is back and forth. You got to sell fights, right? But at the end of the day, I just tell people, like, I'm not scared of anybody. I'm just willing to put in the work that it takes to be better than you and compete with you. And if I lose, fine. If I win, I win. I think acting tough is the least sexy thing you can do in life. Nobody likes it. Girls don't like it. It's distasteful. It's just like, it's gross, and I get that people try to, clickbait these days and get views and get people to think that you're such a tough guy, mentality. But at the end of the day, man, I think it's cool that I can walk around and be myself, generally just be, who I am, and still go in there and have a crack with somebody, put on some gloves, throw some hands. Like, I don't need to do any of the talking. And so I always find it funny when I see guys like AP or others on X and, saying that I'm willing to die for this or I'm doing this, whatever. It's like, I just kind of laugh because, again, I do this for fun. Yeah. I don't need to box. I like, nobody's forcing me to box. I just do it because I think it's fun. I think it's cool. And it's a way for me to compete, So, but again, there's selling fights. People have to sell fights. And so people like the back and forth. I get that. But there's a way to conduct yourself in a way where you can have a back and forth with somebody and not go to a point where you're this macho man or you have this ego or, this and that. But, I don't really pay attention to all of that noise. I just, in life in general, I just try to conduct myself in the way I see fit and be good to people and just do my thing, man. I don't have to prove my ego to anybody. I don't have to talk smack on X. I'm just me, man. I just work hard. I just do my thing. So
yeah, for sure. That's honestly, like, you're very, like, you're pure, like, you don't compromise your character or compromise your ideologies just for a boxing match. You're just you, and I think a lot of people need that. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, you can put a character on, but I think some people compromise that a bit too much, and then sort of the line becomes very blurred. It's very blurred between the character and the person. You get what I mean?
Take Fox the G, for example, right? Like, you can see he's a genuinely good guy. He really carries himself. You can see it in his emotions after his last fight. And yes, when he gets in the face of somebody at the face off and, there's back and forth, there's going to be tension there. There's going to be words said. Same with me, in a fight buildup. If you're coming at me, like, I'm going to look you in your eye like I'm going to beat you up when we fight. But at the end of the day, I don't have to compromise myself, on a day-to-day and be this, like, big, tough dude, because that's not how I carry myself. That's not who I am. I just like competing. I like doing my thing. And, yeah, in a fight, obviously there is going to be some aggression in a buildup. There is going to be some aggression, but at the end of the day, win or lose, I'll give credit to my opponent. I'll look him in the face and say, hey, we just did that. I respect anybody who gets in the ring, because I do believe it is the toughest sport in the world. So, yeah, but it is funny. Like I've noticed this, especially in the last 3 creator fight leagues, is, the guys who talk tough and then you walk by them, they're, looking at the ground, they're shaking. They can't even pass a physical the first time around because their heart rate is so high. Like, I just think it's funny, but, to each their own.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to wrap up the interview here, but my last question is, I ask this at the end of all my interviews that I conduct. What, in your opinion, is the best quote or piece of advice you've ever heard or received?
Man, I'm trying to think. I do love this quote. I forgot who said it, but it's if they don't have what you want, don't listen to what they have to say. There's no greater waste in time than justifying your actions to people who don't have the life you have, right? Like, we live in a life that's so short. So, why do I have to listen to somebody, tell me what to do, or take the advice from somebody that doesn't live the life that I want to live? I think that that's so important, right? Like, there's so many different things you can do in this world. There's so many different ideologies, religions, family ethics. And so it's about, staying centered in who you are, but just being around the people that, you want to be around, listening to the people you want to be around or emulate, not listening to all the outside noise. So I think that that's kind of been a important saying in my life. I forget who said it, but yeah.
Wow, that's a very, very, very good quote, and it's applicable to everyone watching at home. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. I appreciate you for coming on.
Brother, thank you so much. Like I said, good luck with all of your success, and I'm wishing you all the best. If you ever need anything, man, you just let me know. All right.